Welcome to my video on the best Terastal for every ghost type Pokemon, where we will go with pure ghost type and all of its dual typings to assign it the best Terastal for every single type. Now, this video has taken a very long time for me to make. I'd really appreciate if you could interact with this. It would make my day, honestly. If you're interested in looking at a specific typing, down in the description below there will be a timestamp for all of the dual typing, so if you go and check that out, if you're looking for something specific, then you can go down there. But if not, we'll get started. Just some clarification about this video. First of all, this is not an exhaustive list of every single Terastal that would work well with that typing. It's just ones that, in my opinion, would work best for those specific typings. Also, this does not factor in abilities, so in the trailer we saw that Colossal turned to a water-type Terastal and had its steam engine activated. Now, in some cases there are going to be abilities that are going to allow for this to be able to take place effectively, and it's going to allow for abilities to be used with regards to the Terastal combination. And when I've talked about their typings here, I have not considered abilities. I will talk about that separately when I do the competitive guide videos in the future. Also, some Pokemon may be suitable to use specific Terastal based on powerful moves that they have. So, for example, if a Pokemon has a ground type move such as Earthquake, which is more powerful than Terra Blast, then they could definitely turn to that Terastal to get that stab, to be able to allow that to do more damage. So in some cases where Pokemon have got powerful moves or a wide move pool, they may be suitable to use more variety of Terastal, but again, I have not factored that in with this one, just on the specific typings as a generalization. Here we have the ghost type Pokemon, the pure ghost Pokemon. Now, there are lots of notable Pokemon for this. I've just put a couple on the screen there. So you've got Poltergeist, you have got Kefagrigus, you have got Dusknoir, Mismagius, and also Bayonet. I've just put a couple of options there, but there are plenty more Pokemon that could fit into this category. Now, with ghost types, they have two weaknesses. They have a ghost type weakness, they are one of the only Pokemon that's weak to themselves, the other being Dragon, and they also have a weakness to dark types. So with this, my suggested Terastal is that you could run a dark type Terastal to allow you to hit the ghost type for super effective damage, and also reduce the amount of damage that you take to not very effective from the dark types. You could also run a fairy type Terastal to allow you to hit for super effective damage on the dark type Pokemon, and you could also allow for yourself to run a normal type Terastal, which would allow you to be able to get a complete immunity to one of your weaknesses, that being ghost type, and also just take neutral damage from the dark type there as well. So that is an opportunity that I'd recommend. I'll possibly go for dark type as the main suggested Terastal here, but fairy and normal are both really good options. Next up, we have the normal ghost Pokemon. Now, the only Pokemon that we have is a Hisuian Zoroark, and essentially this thing only has one weakness. This is only weak to dark type Pokemon. Now, because of the dark type weakness, you have got two types here. You could also run the bug type Terastal, but typically bug type is deemed as quite weak because it does have quite a few weaknesses. But I would suggest the fighting type or the fairy type. They are both super effective against dark type Pokemon. Fighting types also will hit things like normal types as well. Now, you wouldn't bother with the ghost type here because realistically, you wouldn't bother with anything weakening to ghost because the ghost types are going to not come in because it's a normal type. So yeah, I'd recommend fighting or fairy in this case. Here we have the bug ghost type. Now, the only typing we have is Shedinja at the minute, but this typing does actually have quite a few different weaknesses. I've come up with 3 Terastal, but there are many Terastal that could be run in case of this. So your bug typing, you are weak to rock types, you are weak to fire types, you are weak to flying types. Ghost typing, you are weak to dark, you are weak to ghost, you are weak to I think that's it. So what you've got here is a fighting type Terastal. Now, that would hit your rock type weakness, and it would also hit your dark type weakness as well. So having a fighting Terastal does cover both of those. Electric Terastal will cover any flying types that want to come in against you, but that is about it. You have then got the fairy typing to cover any dark type Pokemon, and also if there are any other situations that could come in. But you could also run things like a water type Terastal, which would allow you to cover your rock and also your fire weakness, which would hit relatively hard. So as I said, there's several different Terastals that you could run there, but I think fighting probably is going to be one of your biggest ones. Electric is pretty good for covering any flying type weaknesses, and then Fairy, again, good for covering dark type weaknesses and also being a generally destructive typing, which is probably one of the top tier typings. Next up, we have the Dark Ghost type, the once typing that didn't have any weaknesses. Now, obviously when fairies were introduced, they were super effective against Dark and neutral against Ghost, meaning that these Pokemon then got nerfed slightly. So the Pokemon we have are Sableye and also Spiritomb here. Now, as they're only weak to Fairy, there are only really two suggested Terastal I would go for here. I was just going for Poison or Steel typing because they're super effective against the Fairy typing, and that's basically the only thing that you need to worry about with regards to this one. Next up is the Dragon and Ghost typing. The only Pokemon that holds this typing is Dragapult, and there are several suggested Terastals I have for this. So with regards to your Dragon typing, obviously Dragon types against it are going to be super effective, so having a Fairy Terastal can definitely be really good, as well as having a weakness to Dark types, which that Fairy Terastal can cover too. You've then got the aspect of Fairy type Pokemon coming in, so you've got the Poison Terastal, which can be super effective against that, possibly even using the Steel Terastal as well, if you want to. They're interchangeable realistically. And then, if you're worried about Ghost type Pokemon coming in, you have got the normal Terastal, so you can turn into a normal type, which would allow you to get that immunity to Ghost types. Obviously, Ghost types could definitely come in against you in this case, so normal type immunity would be absolutely fantastic. So next up, we have got our Pokemon typing of Electric and Ghost. Now, the only Electric Ghost Pokemon we have currently is Rotom. Bear in mind, this does have Levitate, so it doesn't have the ground weakness, but at the same time, there could be Pokemon that do get revealed that are an Electric Ghost type, so I do want to cover alternatives as well. So your main weakness here is obviously going to be your ground typing. Your ground typing is the big huge weakness in this aspect. So you've got the Water, Ice and Grass typing as a Terastal for coverage of that in any way, as covered with the other electric types. Now, with regards to the Ghost typing, you could have a Ghost type Pokemon that comes in, so you could have the Dark Terastal to be super effective against that, and also possibly Psychic type Pokemon that could be randomly appearing. Also, you have got the aspect of running a Fairy type to cover a Fairy type Terastal to cover the Dark type weakness as well. So that is potentially another option that you could potentially run with these other Terastals. So any of those 5 that I've spoken about could work for this. Next up, we have the Fairy Ghost typing, and the only Pokemon that we have for this typing is Mimikyu. Now, Fairy typing obviously has the weakness of the Steel and Poison, and Ghost is weak to Ghost and Dark. Now, in this case, I think it's very unlikely that a Dark type is going to come in because you have the Fairy typing here. So I think, in terms of Ghost, a Ghost type will come in. Again, less likely, but in this scenario, I reckon it would be more likely to be a Ghost than a Dark type. So I would run a Dark Terastal if I was concerned about that. However, I think a better Terastal to run would definitely be the Ground type because it covers the 2 Fairy weaknesses of Poison and Ground, but also Fighting allows you to be able to cover any Dark types that could potentially come in, as well as any Steel types that could come in. So Ground, I would say, is the best, then Fighting, then Dark type on the usability of these Terrastals. Next up, we have got the Fighting and Ghost type. Now, this is only currently available with Marshadow, but in the future, I'm sure we'll see other Pokemon that do have this typing. Now, in terms of weaknesses here, you have got Fairy, Flying, and Psychic as a weakness. However, you're unlikely to see a Psychic type come in due to the fact you already have this Ghost typing. So I'd say Fairy and Flying are definitely going to be your main enemies in this respect. I think Steel type is definitely going to be the perfect typing in this case because it allows you to resist all 3 of your weaknesses and hit super effectively against Fairy types. You've got Electric typing, which allows you to cover the Flying type weakness, and also I've put Dark type here just in case someone with a Psychic type comes in and tries to hit you hard, because that will happen sometimes. You could also run something like a Rock or an Ice type, but you do need to kind of be careful in case alternative mons do come in and cause damage there, but that is another alternative that you could. Here we have the Fire and Ghost typing. Now, there are a few Pokemon that are notable here. You have got Blacephalon, you have got Chandelure, and you have also got Alolan Marowak. They are all very good representatives of this type. Now, the weaknesses associated with this type, you have got the standard weaknesses of the Fire type, So the water, the rock and the ground. Now a grass Terastal covers all three of those really fantastically, so I would say that's probably the top Terastal here. However, if you're worried about the ghost side of things, because you could have a ghost type come in, then you could run a dark Terastal. If you're worried about a dark type coming in, you could definitely run a fairy Terastal as well if you wanted to. Bear in mind that the dark would also resist the dark type attack on there as well. But I think definitely the top one here would be grass, but if you're worried about the ghost type aspect, then fairy or dark would be a really good secondary option. Next up we have the flying ghost type. Now the only Pokemon that's notable here is Drifblim, but there could be more in the future. Now, with regards to weaknesses, for flying type, you have still got your electric, your ice, and your rock type weakness. And for ghost, you have got your ghost and your dark type weaknesses. So in this case, you can run a fighting type that would allow you to be able to hit the dark type for super effective damage, and also the ice type and rock type for super effective damage. So it would work really, really well as a Terastal type, covering a variety of different things. You've got fairy, which would allow you to be able to hit the dark type that could come in against you in this scenario. You could also run a ghost type or a dark type Terastal to be able to hit any ghost types that might want to come in. But your ground type will also cover your rock type and also your electric type that could come in against this. So I think personally your fighting type or your ground type are going to be your best Terastals here, but fairy type could be another option if you're worried about those dark type Pokemon coming in and causing damage, especially if you don't have anything on your team already to deal with it. Next up we have the ghost and grass type here. So a few notable Pokemon here are Decidueye, Delmise and Trevenant. You do have Gourgeist there as well, I just couldn't fit the picture on for all four of them. Now with regards to the ghost typing, you have the weakness of the ghost type itself and also the dark typing, hence why I've given the dark type Terastal, because that allows you to get not very effective damage from the dark type and also super effective damage on the ghost typing. And we have the fairy to again cover the dark type Pokemon that might come in. Now with regards to your grass typing, you have got two weaknesses. You have got a fire type weakness and also an ice weakness. So with regards to the fire type weakness, you might want to run a ground type Pokemon or possibly even a water type Pokemon. With a water type Pokemon, it would reduce the impact of the ice type damage because that would go to not very effective rather than super effective. So water type could definitely work really well here as well. You could even run potentially like a fighting type situation, but it would depend on what you personally need for your Terastal. Next up we have the ghost ground typing. So there are two fantastic Pokemon here. There's Golurk and there is Palossand. Now they are brilliant Pokemon to use. Definitely would recommend that you give them a try. Now with regards to the ghost and ground typing, there are quite a few different weaknesses. You have got your dark type and your ghost type standard. So you've got the dark type Terastal that you could use to stop the ghost type, reduce that damage. You could also use it to minimize the amount of damage you're taking from dark type moves. You could also run a fairy Terastal to get rid of any dark type Pokemon as well. With regards to the ground type, you have got three weaknesses. You have got your grass, your water and your ice weakness. So you could run a water Terastal that would allow for you to get rid of the damage with regards to water and ice types. You could run a grass Terastal because that would allow you to get rid of the damage with regards to the grass type and allow you to hit super effective on the water type. Or you could run the ice Terastal, which will allow you to be able to get super effective damage on the grass type that could come in. So with those ones, it does become a bit of a cluster situation that does get a little bit confusing. You could also run the flying type scenario, which could allow you to get super effective damage on the grass type, but bear in mind that you can get hit hard by the ice type then, that could potentially come in because of your ground typing. So do be very considerate there. I probably would suggest more the fairy or the dark type because it allows you to get neutral from all the other ones rather than putting yourself in slightly difficult situations based on just luck, essentially. Next up we have Ice and Ghost, and the only Pokemon currently sporting this is Frostlass. Now this is a really cool typing in my opinion. It does have a few weaknesses. So you have the generic weakness of the Ghost type alongside the Dark type weakness. So again, I'd recommend using a Dark type Pokemon, which would allow for you to reduce the damage of Ghost type to not very effective. Same with the dark type being not very effective and having the offensive power against the ghost type there as well, but you could run the fairy typing Terastal if you wanted to be super effective against dark type moves. When it comes to the ice type, you have got a weakness to fire, rock and steel type moves. However, those are very effectively covered by ground type Terastal. So I definitely think that ground type Terastal in this case would be the best instance but Fairy and Dark would definitely follow as a secondary one to be able to deal with all of the other ones quite neutrally. Here we have the Ghost and Poison typing, and the notable Pokemon here is Gengar. I don't think any other Pokemon does have this typing at current, but with this you have got a couple of weaknesses. So with the standard Ghost weaknesses of Ghost typing and Dark typing, and then the Poison has the Ground and the Psychic typing. Now the chances of a Psychic type coming in are quite slim because you have got the Ghost type stab capability here as well, but in that case I definitely would recommend that you run a Dark type Terastal, because that Dark type Terastal, one, gives you an immunity to Psychic, makes not very effective for Ghost type damage, makes not very effective for Dark type damage, and allows you to be able to hit the Ghost and the Psychic type Pokemon for super effective damage. You then have the Fairy, which you could run in case a Dark type Pokemon comes in. You also have the Water type Terastal to be able to cover for any Ground type that might decide to come in. But I think in this situation, Dark type is going to be the best Terastal, followed by Fairy, and Water being a good secondary one if you can't run that for any reason. Here we have the Ghost and Psychic type, and the notable Pokemon here is Hooper. So this one is really interesting because Ghost and Psychic, from what I can tell, only has two main weaknesses, but they are both 4 times. One is Ghost and one is Dark. So what I would recommend in terms of Terastal is you could run a normal type that will give you an immunity to the Ghost, so essentially going from ×4 to ×0, or it will give you the removal from Dark from ×4 to ×1, which means that defensively that is really, really strong. So you could definitely run the normal type Terastal here. You could definitely run a Fairy Terastal if you wanted to here as well, because realistically you're going to have a Dark type come in or a Ghost type. Now, if you turn to Fairy, it reduces the amount of damage that you get from the Ghost type, reduces it's not very effective from the Dark type, and you have a super effective attack against the Dark type. You also have the Fighting type Terastal, which you could use, which could hit super effective against any Dark types, but you do need to be very careful here because Ghost types definitely could come in, and obviously Ghost types are immune to Fighting types. So I would say offensively, Fairy's the best, defensively, Normal is the best, but Fighting could be a secondary option if you absolutely needed something else to use. Next up, we have got the Ghost and Rock type, which there are currently no Pokemon that have this typing at time of recording. So with regards to this, you've got your standard Ghost weakness of the Ghost super effective and the Dark super effective. Now you could run the Fairy Terastal or the Dark Terastal in this case, and it would take away your weaknesses evolved with the Ghost typing there, and would allow for you to hit super effectively with the Ghost type if you have the Dark Terastal, and super effectively on the Dark if you have the Fairy Terastal. Now with regards to the Rock typing, you do have the weakness to Ground, Water and Grass, and also Steel. So with regards to this, I would definitely recommend that you run potentially a Grass or a Water Terastal, because you're going to likely have a Ground, Water, Grass or Steel Pokemon come in. Steel probably could be likely, but I think definitely having the Water or the Grass here would work really, really nicely, allowing you to hit, or if you use the Grass, you can hit the Water type super effectively, and you can also hit the Ground type super effectively. Water, you can hit the Ground type super effectively, the Steel type neutrally, and also take not very effective damage from the Water type, but you do have to obviously be considering the Grass type that could come in as well. You could also run a Flying type here as well, which isn't going to work very well for the Flying type, but it definitely will work well with giving you a Ground immunity and also hitting the Grass type for super effective damage. So it depends what you personally need to look for here, but there are definitely lots of different Terastal options you could run there. Anything that I've mentioned definitely would work in a battle. Here we have the Ghost and Steel type Pokemon, which is represented by Aegislash, the only Ghost and Steel type Pokemon we currently have. But with this typing, there are quite a few weaknesses associated as well. So with the Ghost typing, you have got the Dark and Ghost weakness, and that can be covered by a Dark or a Fairy Terastal. So the Dark Terastal would allow you to be able to take less damage on the Dark and the Ghost type attacks, and super effective on the Ghost, and the Fairy would allow you to take less damage on the Dark type attacks, and it would take neutral damage on the Ghost type attacks whilst hitting super effectively on the Dark type Pokemon. So it could work very effectively there, and then anything that's super effective against the Steel typing would be neutral essentially. With regards to the Steel typing, you have got a few weaknesses involved here. You have got Fire types, you have got Ground types, and you have got potentially that's it. So with regards to fire types, I definitely recommend having a ground or a water Terastal, and that would allow for you to be able to hit those for super effective damage whilst taking less damage overall. And in the case of the ground Terastal, you can run the water type Terastal. So I think water in this case would probably be the best Terastal to run, because it would hit both the ground and the fire aspect, of which you are going to probably receive super effective damage, and it receives neutral damage on the other weaknesses that you have, such as Ghost and Dark, but you could definitely run a Fairy or Dark Terastal on side of that as well. Next up, we have the Water and Ghost typing here, and the notable Pokemon here is Jellicent. So with this typing on the Ghost, obviously you have a weakness to Ghost typing itself and also Dark typing, and this means that you could run a Dark or a Fairy Terastal. So the Dark Terastal would allow for you to be able to take not very much damage on the Ghost and the Dark front, and allow you to hit super effectively on the Ghost type, and then the Fairy would allow for you to hit super effectively on the Dark type, take less damage from the Dark type, and take neutral damage on the Ghost type. With regards to the Water, you have a weakness to Grass and Electric here. So what I thought would work well is that Electric, obviously you have a ground Terastal, that would cover it very, very well. And with regards to the Grass aspect, you could definitely run a Bug Terastal, and this doubles up to work really effectively against the Dark type Pokemon that could hit you. So you get two really effective moves that could hit. So I definitely would recommend, in this case, the Bug Terastal will probably be my top tier, then probably Dark or Fairy, and then the bottom one, but still very good, would be the Ground Terastal. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate every single view that any of these videos get, and you know, I put so much time into this that if you made it this way, then all I can do is thank you with my heart, because you know, you're what helps the channel. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. As I said, if you could interact, I'd really appreciate it. Comment down below if there are any ones that you disagree with, or any ones that you would add a different Terastal typing to, and give your reasoning for it as well. And I'd really love to see that. I think that would be a really, really cool way to interact with me, and I will definitely take a look at them, and I'll try and reply as much as I can. But yeah, thank you so much for watching.